The rain poured down in heavy sheets as Evelyn Carter trudged along the cracked sidewalks of Birmingham, clutching a thin jacket that barely shielded her from the cold. Her shoes were soaked through, each step making a squelching sound as water seeped in, but she kept moving forward. The streets smelled faintly of fried food and damp concrete, yet none of it mattered to her. Her mind was fixed on one thing: getting back to the small apartment before her children returned from school. She was exhausted from the diner shift, her back aching from bending over counters, but she carried a paper bag with just enough food to cobble together a simple dinner. In her heart, she told herself it would be worth it, because Malik and Selena deserved to come home to a warm meal, even if it meant she would go hungry again. That night's rainstorm was just one of many Evelyn had walked through over the years. Life had never handed her ease or comfort, but she refused to bend under its weight. Her children's father had left long ago, chasing promises of freedom in another state, never looking back. She remembered the day he walked out, the silence that followed, the way she had to dry her own tears quickly because two small pairs of eyes were staring at her, waiting for assurance that everything would be okay. From that moment forward, she became both mother and father, protector and provider, sacrificing herself for the fragile little family she was determined to hold together. Every morning, Evelyn rose before dawn to prepare Malik and Selena for school, packing whatever food she could afford into their lunchboxes. Sometimes it was just peanut butter sandwiches or a handful of fruit bought from the corner market. She never complained about the smallness of their meals, only smiled and said, "You've got this, babies. Don't ever forget that your dreams are bigger than your stomach." And somehow, the children carried that encouragement with them. Malik grew into a sharp, determined boy who excelled in math and business studies, while Selena blossomed into a quiet dreamer with a love for books and writing. Evelyn would sit in the back rows of school events, her uniform still smelling faintly of detergent from the laundromat job, clapping until her hands were sore. Her pride in them burned brighter than any hardship, but the work it cost her was brutal. To keep food on the table, she juggled multiple jobs. Days at the laundromat were followed by nights cleaning office floors, and weekends were swallowed by hotel housekeeping shifts. Her hands grew rough, her knuckles cracked from chemicals, and her body begged for rest she never allowed. There were nights she collapsed on the couch, too tired to make it to her bed, but when Malik or Selena tucked a blanket over her shoulders, she felt whole again. They were her reason for breathing. But children grow, and the innocence of their devotion begins to fade. Malik was the first to pull away. College brought him into a world of ambition and status, and slowly he began to find his mother's presence inconvenient. "Mom, you don't have to come to the campus with food," he would say, shifting uncomfortably if friends saw her carrying bags of home-cooked meals. His tone cut through her like glass, but she forced a smile and nodded, whispering, "I just want to make sure you're okay." Selena, too, began to carve her own path. Her university life swept her into circles that valued appearance and reputation, and Evelyn's worn dresses and patched coats embarrassed her daughter. When Evelyn asked to visit, Selena's voice softened but held a barrier. "It's just, Mom, you wouldn't really fit in here. Maybe later, okay?" The distance grew quietly, like ivy climbing over a house, until Evelyn barely recognized the bond that once tethered them. Phone calls dwindled, visits became rare, and when they did come, they were often hurried, distracted, filled with polite reassurances rather than true connection. Evelyn told herself it was natural children becoming independent, but deep down, loneliness pressed harder with each passing year. Then came the health problems. The long hours and poor nutrition caught up with her, sending her blood pressure soaring and her joints aching. One night, after leaving her shift at the diner, she fainted on the sidewalk. A stranger called an ambulance, and Evelyn woke in a sterile hospital room, tubes in her arm and monitors beeping beside her. Malik and Selena appeared briefly, their expressions more anxious about schedules than her condition. Malik stood at the foot of her bed, saying, "Mom, you need to think about applying for government aid. It's not realistic for you to keep pushing yourself like this." Selena added, "Or maybe move into a smaller place. Senior housing might be easier for you." Neither offered a place in their own homes, neither asked her what she truly wanted. They only provided solutions that required no sacrifice from them. When Evelyn was discharged, bills from the hospital joined the stack already waiting at home. She could no longer keep up with rent, and soon the landlord delivered a notice. Her apartment, the small place that had once held the echoes of her children's laughter, was gone. With no family willing to take her in, Evelyn carried her belongings in a duffel bag, moving from shelter to shelter, sometimes sleeping on park benches when beds were full. The city she once hurried through on her way to jobs now swallowed her whole, reducing her to a shadow unseen by the crowds rushing past. She still prayed for her children. Every night, lying on a cot or under an overpass, she whispered their names into the darkness. Keep Malik safe. Keep Selena strong. She thought of them constantly, Malik in his suit, Selena in her tidy neighborhood, and told herself that her suffering was not their fault. They had built better lives, and perhaps it was meant to be that she carried the weight alone. But loneliness gnawed at her spirit, and though she never said it out loud, her heart longed for a simple hug, a visit, a reminder that she was not forgotten. Even in homelessness, Evelyn's dignity endured. She volunteered at church kitchens, handing out plates of food to children who reminded her of her own. She smiled at them, knelt to wipe crumbs from their faces, and told them the same words she had told Malik and Selena. You've got this. Don't you ever forget. Some days, her smile was the only thing she had left to give, but it mattered to her to keep giving, even when life had stripped her bare. And so Evelyn carried on, her body weary, her spirit bruised, but her heart still beating with love that refused to die. The world may have abandoned her, her own children may have turned their backs, but she held fast to the belief that love itself was not wasted, that even unseen, it had value. She did not yet know that fate had something unexpected in store, that her story was not ending here in the shadows, but quietly preparing for a transformation neither Malik nor Selena could have imagined. The morning the letter arrived, Evelyn Carter was sitting on the steps of a shelter, sipping weak coffee from a styrofoam cup. She had grown used to mail being irrelevant to her life. Bills she couldn't pay, notices she couldn't answer, offers for services she would never afford. But this envelope was different, cream-colored, heavier than usual, her name written in careful ink. The director of the shelter had handed it to her with a raised brow, as if to say, "What business does the world have with you now?" Evelyn opened it with trembling fingers, her breath catching as she read the words inside. Her estranged brother, Franklin Hayes, had died. A man she had not seen in nearly 20 years, a man whose silence she had long mistaken for indifference, had left behind a will. And in that will, he had named her sole heir. The number printed there was almost incomprehensible, $60 million. Evelyn read it once, twice, a third time, certain her weary eyes were deceiving her. But the truth was plain. Her brother, the one who had left their childhood town behind and built his fortune quietly, had never forgotten her. He had admired her sacrifices from afar, had respected the resilience she embodied, and in his final act, he entrusted her with the wealth she had never dared to dream of. At first, Evelyn did not know what to do with the news. She sat in the shelter courtyard, the laughter of children echoing around her, thinking of the nights she had slept cold and hungry while her own children lived in comfort. The bitterness tried to rise. Why had Franklin not reached out sooner? Why had she suffered so long when this lifeline could have changed everything years ago? But Evelyn had never been one to dwell in anger. Instead, she whispered a prayer of gratitude, tears rolling down her cheeks, and promised herself she would use this gift not for revenge, not for vanity, but for purpose. She began by renting a modest apartment, not the kind Malik would brag about or Selena would host guests in, but a place that gave her warmth, privacy, and a bed she could finally call her own. Yet she did not linger in comfort for long. Her heart pulled her in another direction, toward the children she had seen every day on the streets, the little faces at the church kitchens, the ones who reminded her of Malik and Selena when they were young and innocent. Evelyn knew what it felt like to be unseen, to be discarded, and she vowed no child under her watch would endure that. With Franklin's inheritance, Evelyn purchased a large, abandoned building on the edge of the city. She transformed it brick by brick into a haven for homeless children, filling it with beds, bright quilts, stocked pantries, and shelves of books. She named it Hayes House, honoring the brother who had made it possible. Children who had slept under bridges now had warm meals and safe places to rest. Volunteers were hired, staff was trained, and slowly, the building filled with laughter, the kind of joyous noise Evelyn had missed for so long. She poured herself into this work, her tired hands finding new strength, her heart rediscovering the rhythm of hope. But in her plans, one decision was deliberate and unshakable. Malik and Selena would receive nothing of Franklin's inheritance. She forgave them in her heart for their abandonment, but forgiveness did not mean forgetting. They had left her in her darkest hours, turned away when she needed even the smallest kindness. This fortune, she decided, belonged not to them, but to those who would value it, the children who had no one else. She sealed her choice in legal documents, ensuring that not a single cent would ever find its way into her children's bank accounts. The idea of teaching Malik and Selena a lesson began to take root in her mind, not out of cruelty, but out of love. She wanted them to see, to truly understand, that wealth and status meant nothing without compassion. So Evelyn devised a plan as bold as it was heartbreaking. She would stage her own death. It pained her to imagine the sorrow on her children's faces, but she believed it was the only way to pierce the armor of pride and indifference they wore so tightly. She worked with a trusted lawyer, a kind man who respected her vision, to carry out the deception. Legal papers were drawn, an obituary was placed, and arrangements were made for a small funeral service. Evelyn withdrew into secrecy, living quietly in the Hayes house, known only to the children and staff who had become her new family. The funeral was a simple one. Malik arrived in a tailored black suit, his face set in a mask of composure, though his eyes betrayed confusion. Selena came draped in pearls, her expression strained between grief and disbelief. They had not been close to their mother in years, and yet here they stood, confronted by the finality of her supposed passing. The service was brief, filled with hymns Evelyn herself had chosen, her absence haunting the air like perfume that lingers after someone has left the room. Afterward, in the lawyer's office, Malik and Selena leaned forward eagerly, expecting perhaps a small inheritance, a last act of generosity from the mother they had neglected. What they heard instead shattered the ground beneath them. Evelyn had left everything, every cent of Franklin's fortune, not to them, but to Hayes' house, the children's home she had built in their absence. The lawyer read her words aloud. "To my children, I leave only my forgiveness. May they learn that true wealth is not in what you keep, but in what you give." Malik's jaw tightened, his pride cracking into anger. Selena covered her mouth with trembling fingers, tears streaming down her cheeks. They had imagined themselves heirs to security, comfort, perhaps luxury, but instead, they were left only with guilt, shame, and a legacy that condemned their neglect. What they did not yet know, what would soon be revealed, was that Evelyn Carter was not gone at all. She was alive, waiting for the moment to step forward, to show them that death had not taken her, but had instead given her the chance to teach them the most powerful lesson of their lives. The days following the will reading were a blur for Malik and Selena Carter. The lawyer's words echoed relentlessly in their minds, haunting them in the silence of their expensive homes. Malik sat in his penthouse apartment one evening, staring at the skyline, glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. The thought that his mother, the woman who had carried him through hunger and sleepless nights, had built something so immense without him knowing, gnawed at his soul. Selena, meanwhile, found herself restless in her manicured neighborhood, her pearls and polished image suddenly feeling heavy, suffocating, useless. She cried quietly in her bathroom, ashamed not only of the loss of wealth but of the mirror that showed her the daughter who had abandoned the one person who had loved her unconditionally. For the first time in years, Malik and Selena talked to each other not about business, not about appearances, but about their mother. "She left us nothing," Malik muttered bitterly, pacing the length of his living room. "Nothing but her forgiveness," Selena whispered, her voice trembling. "And somehow, that hurts worse than if she'd cursed us." They were left with guilt, gnawing and unrelenting, a mirror to the choices they had made, the coldness they had offered when warmth would have cost them nothing. It was a month later when the truth began to unfold. Malik had agreed to visit Hayes' house, driven not by generosity, but by curiosity. He wanted to see what had been deemed more worthy than him. When he arrived, He was greeted by the sound of children laughing in the courtyard, running across freshly cut grass, their faces bright with joy. Inside, volunteers moved through clean hallways lined with artwork drawn by small hands. The smell of home-cooked meals drifted from the kitchen, and a young girl tugged at Malik's sleeve, asking if he was one of Miss Evelyn's friends. He froze, the name cutting through him like lightning. Miss Evelyn. In a sunlit office at the far end of the hall, the door opened, and there she was, Evelyn Carter. Alive, whole, smiling gently as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. Malik stumbled back, his voice breaking. Mom? You're alive. Behind him, Selena gasped, covering her mouth as tears flooded her eyes. Evelyn walked toward them slowly, her steps steady, her presence radiating both strength and tenderness. Yes, my children, she said softly, I am alive. And I chose this path because I needed you to see what love truly looks like, not the kind measured in bank accounts, but the kind that shelters, feeds, and lifts up others. Malik's composure shattered. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Selena fell into Evelyn's arms, sobbing like a child. For a long while, no words were spoken, only the sound of weeping and the quiet hum of children playing outside. Evelyn stroked Selena's hair and rested a hand on Malik's shoulder. I forgive you, she whispered. I forgave you long before this. But forgiveness does not mean you inherit wealth. What I built here is not for you to spend, it is for those who would have had nothing otherwise. What I offer you now is a chance not for riches, but for redemption. Her words cut deeper than anger ever could. Malik and Selena realized at that moment that what they had lost was not the money, it was their mother's trust, her presence, her unwavering love. Yet even in their failure, she was still offering them a way back, not with dollars and inheritance, but with an invitation to rediscover family and compassion. Evelyn welcomed them to be part of Hayes' house, not as heirs, but as helpers. She wanted them to experience what it meant to give, to sacrifice, to see the joy of lifting others instead of themselves. At first, Malik resisted. He had spent too many years measuring worth in titles and profits. But one afternoon, he watched a young boy barefoot, wide-eyed, reminding him of himself at 6 years old, grin as Malik helped him build a toy tower. In that moment, Malik felt a crack in the armor he had worn for so long. Selena, on the other hand, dove into the work quickly. She began tutoring the children in writing, organizing small plays and storytelling nights, rediscovering the warmth she had lost in the pursuit of appearances. Slowly, both siblings found themselves transformed, not by wealth, but by giving. Evelyn never relented on her decision. Malik and Selena would not touch a cent of Franklin Hayes' inheritance. Hayes' house remained for the children, for the lost, for the broken who needed mending. Yet what Evelyn did give her children was infinitely more powerful, a chance to heal their fractured bond, to learn that love is the only wealth that multiplies when shared. She became once again the center of their lives, not because of what she owned, but because of who she was, a mother whose sacrifices had outlived poverty, abandonment, and even her staged death. Years later, when Hayes' house expanded into multiple cities, Malik and Selena stood proudly beside Evelyn at the ribbon cuttings. They introduced themselves not as beneficiaries, but as her children, humbled and grateful to have been given another chance. Evelyn would smile at them with quiet pride, her eyes often lingering on the children running free in the courtyards. She knew she had kept her promise not just to Franklin, not just to herself, but to every forgotten child who needed a home. Evelyn Carter's legacy was not $60 million. It was the laughter of children who finally felt safe, the tears of 2 grown children who had found their way back to love, and the quiet assurance that forgiveness, though costly, had the power to restore what neglect had tried to destroy. She had proved that true wealth was never counted in currency, but in the hearts changed and the lives uplifted. And though Malik and Selena never inherited her fortune, they inherited something far more lasting, the lesson that family, compassion, and humility outweigh even the grandest bank accounts. Moral lesson: life's greatest inheritance is not measured in money, but in the moments we choose to love, forgive, and rebuild. Evelyn's journey reminds us that even when neglected, a parent's love endures, and though wealth may come and go, the legacy of kindness cannot be erased. True strength lies in lifting others, True wealth lies in compassion, and true redemption lies in choosing to return to love even after straying. If this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, and comment below what lesson